I don't usually have a plan because quite often I keep everything in my head, but as things started to get a bit more hectic and with 2 children, I decided to write a small plan for the rest of this year. It's literally just a couple of paragraphs in a Word document, one for each thing I want to try and get done this year. I've got it saved on my desktop so that I can go back in and have a look, refocus myself and make sure that I actually get things done. I am thinking that I'm going to do a similar thing for next year, just to help me focus with what I need to get done. I would love to see my books televised. It would be amazing. I have no idea who would play who. I do tend to write quite visually, so I think I do see them as scenes in my head, and that would lend them very easily to TV or film. Can you imagine it? It would be so amazing. I'd probably go and see it every week if it came out of the cinema. It's quite difficult to write with kids, I will admit. Especially when one is so much older than the other. I have a 5-year-old little boy and a 10-month-old little girl. Obviously he goes to school, so you think, yay, I've got the daytime, but that's not always the case because obviously I have to look after her. What I usually end up doing is putting them to bed at 7, and then that's when my writing day begins. So I often joke that I go to work when they go to bed. It does make it difficult. It also makes me focus harder on what I need to do, and I'm very lucky in that it doesn't take me long to write 1,000 words. I can do that in about half an hour if I'm inspired, and really with me, with editing, it's just a case of forcing myself to sit down and just get on with it. Eat the frog, as they say. Social media takes up so much of your time. I mean, I'm sure, as you know, it's a case of you go on Facebook and you start scrolling, and then before you know it, an hour's gone past. When you've got little time but you need to do social media and you need to write or edit or whatever it is that you're working on at the time, I think you just have to give yourself boundaries. I try to say, right, an hour, work on it for an hour. There are certain things I do on certain days. I cannot look at all the platforms I'm on all the time, so I tend to focus. So I'll look at Pinterest on a Friday, and I'll do little bits of tweeting throughout the day, and I just try and make sure that whatever I'm doing is consistent. And you know, if I say I'm going to be there on a certain day, then I'll be there on that day. The easiest way I find to discover issues in my timeline is to sit down with a pad of paper and read my books and do little highlights of that chapter. So I'll have day 1, who's there and what they do, and then go on and so forth. And then I notice that maybe everything happens in one day, or perhaps people are in 2 places at once, that sort of thing. I find that the easiest way to keep track of my timeline and who is where. And yes, I find lots of holes, but it's also one of the easiest ways to fill those holes as well. My favourite book to write would be possibly the latest one I work on, because I tend to throw everything at my book and I get sick of it by the time it's ready to publish, which I probably shouldn't say, but no, it's always the new idea, the fresh idea, what you're working on next, growing as a writer, improving my craft. I do love The Rose Thief, but I love Interspecies Poker Tournament even more, which is the new book in that world. So yeah, it's always going to be the latest one, I think.